Very important proclamation for Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women Awareness Day. Do you want to come up while I read this? Or all right, I'll go ahead. Whereas the City of Missoula joins with Canada to spur awareness in Montana, the Great Plains region, and the United States for murdered and missing Indigenous women, and whereas there is not a comprehensive estimate of Indigenous women who are missing and murdered in the United States, but many factors contribute to this crisis, such as fear, stigma, legal barriers, racism, sexism, and the devastating levels of violence in the U.S. And whereas nearly half of all Native American women in the United States have been raped, beaten, or stalked by an intimate partner, they are 2.5 times more likely to experience sexual assault. 1 in 3 will be raped in her lifetime. A Native woman is more likely to die by homicide than by illness. Intentional homicide has been the 3rd leading cause of death for Native females aged 10 to 24. And on some reservations, Native women and girls are murdered at more than 10 times the national average. And whereas for more than 20 years there have been awareness-raising efforts in Canada on Valentine's Day, and the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women Awareness Day seeks to build support by increasing awareness in the United States. Now, therefore, John Anglin, Mayor of Missoula, Montana, does hereby proclaim Friday, February 14th, 2020 as Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women Awareness Day. Sorry I couldn't stand because I can't do the mic while I stand.
In 2017, there were 5,646 Native women who were reported missing in the United States. Native Americans are 6.7% of Montana's population, yet in between 2016 and 18, they made up 26% of the state's missing cases. In a piece written on January 22, 2020, Nick Martin wrote, "After you read enough about it, you realize that this murdered and missing Indigenous women's crisis is about patterns and a refusal to do what's necessary to stop them. Patterns of violent men and extractive industries breezing through land that they do not own to take lives that do not belong to them. Patterns of tribal sovereignty being undermined and jurisdictional borders being crossed. Patterns of police dismissing concerned mothers and fathers, aunties and grandparents, with the excuses that runaways always come back. Patterns of coroners dodging paperwork and scrawling other next to the line titled race, and accidental death next to cause of death. Patterns of government officials, top to bottom, ignoring practical sovereignty first reforms and instead hoarding the kind of power that keeps this crisis alive. The 3rd leading cause of death among American Indian women is murder. According to a study done by the Urban Indian Health Institute in 2016, the states with the highest number of MMIWG cases were Arizona with 54, Alaska with 52, California with 40, and Montana with 42. The MMIWG epidemic deeply impacts urban American Indian and Alaska Native communities, and the dialogue must shift to include them. Any policy addressing MMIWG that does not account for the violence urban Native communities experience will not adequately address this issue. Savannah's Act, a federal bill aimed at collecting data on the new MMIWG cases, though it is named after Savannah LaFontaine Greywind, who was murdered in Fargo, North Dakota, presently it solely asks federal law enforcement to track and report data. Because cases occurring in urban areas are not in federal jurisdiction, that means that missing and murdered urban Native women and girls, including Savannah herself, would not have been included in the data that the bill aims to collect. Gaps such as these allow violence in urban Native women and girls to continue. Tribal nations must have the ability to advocate for their citizens living in urban areas when they go missing or are killed. This is a courtesy extended to all other sovereign nations. When a citizen is killed while living or traveling outside the nation of which they are a citizen, a nation is notified of their death and able to advocate for their citizen's case and family. This basic respect must be afforded to tribal nations as well, so that they are fully able to practice their inherent sovereignty by advocating for the health and safety of their citizens, regardless of where they reside. Today, on the Montana Missing Persons Clearinghouse, there are 147 missing persons. 43 of those are Indigenous people, comprising 29%. There are also 44 missing children, 16 of which are Native American, making up 36%. Again, the Native American population of Montana is 6.7%. Thank you.
I'm European American. My ancestors are from Germany and Scotland. And if something were to happen to me, there are systems that would go into place. I have escaped abusive relationships because of those systems that are in place. There is no reason those systems should not work for my sisters that their ancestors are from here.
I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the Missoula Native community for this. A lot of times I say, if you consider yourself a Montanan, then Native American history is part of your history. It's part of all of our history. Our current well-being is the same as everyone else's, and our future is also the same. And so if we can do everything we can to make sure that, as traditionally many of us come from maternal societies, keeping our sisters and daughters and mothers and aunties and grandmas safe is of utmost importance. So this just means a lot.
6 weeks ago, when my 15-year-old cousin went missing, I couldn't breathe for 32 hours. Thank God she was found, but in 2013, when I went missing, my mom couldn't breathe for 48 hours. Thank God I was found. I can't imagine how Selena's family is missing. Last week, my little niece came up to me and she said, "Is Jermaine still missing?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Are people still looking for her?" I said, "Yes." She said, "It's like they're disappearing and no one cares." And I said, "I know. How are you supposed to heal when they're born with a broken heart?"
I would like to thank you for this proclamation. I'd also like to keep in mind that even though the proclamation, it applies, as you're saying, to a small percentage of this community and to the state of Montana. By helping us, we help increase understanding, and we do help each other, because there's other women, young girls, aunties, grandmothers, mothers, who also disappear. And from the greater community, if we learn to help each other through understanding, respect, and true heartfelt, energetic help to help the families and help find these people, we help each other and we all benefit. Thank you.
I want to thank this committee and council for the wisdom of this proclamation. Suffice to say that it is just only a sliver of the recognition of the indignities that have happened to Indigenous people on these lands. We have to begin moving beyond just land acknowledgments and language and words. What we need is action in Indian country and restore of dignity to our people. And so this begins in our halls of education. This begins in places like this. This begins outside of these halls and on our streets. And so hopefully moving forward, we can work closer together to build that recognition and to work on solutions that are far-reaching and effective. Thank you.